All right, let's dive into this, shall we? Ruby Lane. You know, it's funny. Everyone thinks they know online marketplaces, but then, bam, Ruby Lane comes along.
It's a different beast for sure.
It is. It's all about those antiques, the vintage stuff, things with a little history behind them. And I know you're interested in this hustling angle
Absolutely.
because we got some excerpts here from 1,000 Ways to Hustle Ruby Lane. I'm guessing you want to turn that passion for antiques,
Into profit.
Yeah, into some cash.
That's right.
So first off, when you hear Ruby Lane, right, you're an expert. What pops into your head?
It's definitely not your typical online marketplace. It's more like a curated boutique experience.
Okay.
It's very specifically for people that love antiques, vintage collectibles. It's a niche.
It's a niche, right? Yeah, you're not going to find the latest iPhone case on Ruby Lane.
Right.
It's like, okay, you got to have a certain taste. Which is interesting because then that means your buyer, the person coming to Ruby Lane, is also a certain type of person.
Exactly.
So you're already kind of filtering out, the window shoppers.
Yeah, you're getting collectors. You're getting enthusiasts, people that are serious about this stuff, maybe interior designers.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Like the people who are really like, I need that statement piece.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to go to, Target or whatever.
Right.
So that's really interesting. And another thing, just right off the bat, with Ruby Lane, we got to mention this, no listing fees.
See.
No final value fees. So you, as the seller, you make that sale, you keep all the money.
It's a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. It's not, you see that on other platforms and it's like, 15%, 20%, right. You're losing a chunk of change there. So that's really cool. So that kind of sets the stage, right? Like this unique atmosphere, unique buyer. How do they pull that off, though? Like, how does Ruby Lane cultivate this very, I don't know, there's almost like an aura about it, right?
Yeah.
There's an antique-y vibe to the whole thing.
Well, for one, you're not going to find any mass-produced items on Ruby Lane. It's all antiques, vintage collectibles, art, and jewelry. And that already, like we said, attracts a different kind of buyer.
Right, yeah. You're coming for a reason.
Yeah.
You're not just browsing.
And these buyers are willing to pay a premium for quality.
Yeah.
For authenticity.
Which makes sense if you're collecting, first edition folks or, Victorian era, whatever it is you're into, you're going to want the real deal.
Exactly.
We're not going to want a knockoff.
You're going to want to see the proof.
Right. So how do you prove that on Ruby Lane? I mean, obviously you can't hold the thing up to the camera.
Right.
So what are some of the strategies they encourage?
All about the details. Detailed descriptions. High quality photos.
Okay.
Like, imagine you're selling a beautiful antique chair. You don't just want to say, oh, this chair is 100 years old. You're going to mention what kind of wood it is. Has it been restored? Any repairs? Maybe even include a little anecdote or some historical context about that style of chair.
Oh, interesting. So it's like almost you're giving a history lesson with each listing.
Exactly. You really want to paint a picture for the buyer and help them appreciate the value of what you're selling.
That's really interesting. And speaking of listings, one thing that's unique about Ruby Lane that's different from, your eBays and your, other marketplaces, you're not just listing individual items.
Right.
You have a shop.
You create your own shop.
So it's like you're curating a collection. It's not just I'm selling this.
It's more than just selling. It's about showcasing your taste, your expertise.
So what are some of the, I don't even know, what are the tips there? Because, I'm imagining my shop, right? And I'm like, okay, I got all this stuff. How do I make it a Ruby Lane shop?
You have to think about what kind of collector you're trying to attract. What's the overall aesthetic you're going for? Are you specializing in Victorian-era jewelry, mid-century modern furniture, or maybe vintage toys?
Oh, that's a good point. So you got to think about okay, what's my niche even within the world of antiques?
Yeah.
Right. What am I bringing to the table?
Yeah, and that focus not only helps you stand out, but it also helps the right buyers find you.
Right. Yeah, because if you're just here's a bunch of random old stuff,
Right.
It's not going to have that same appeal.
Exactly.
Like that curated collection. So that's really cool. And then so you got your shop set up, you've got, your aesthetic in mind, then there's that about section, right?
Yes.
That every shop has, on most platforms. But I'm guessing that's even more important on Ruby Lane.
Absolutely. It's your opportunity to really connect with potential buyers, to share your story. Why are you passionate about these items? What expertise do you bring to the table?
So it's like that personal touch. Like, hey, I'm not just a, faceless corporation.
Right.
I'm a person who loves, old cameras or whatever it might be.
And people buy from people they trust. And your About section really helps establish that trust.
So, okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty here. You've got your shop looking beautiful. You got your About section. It's charming. People are, falling in love with you already.
Right.
Now you got to list an item. Let's say you found this amazing, antique silver tea set.
Okay.
How do you make that shine online?
You got to think like a collector. What details would they want to see? High-quality photos are an absolute must. Multiple angles. Close-ups of any maker's marks.
Oh, maker's marks. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, if you're into antiques, those things.
Exactly.
You're looking for that.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to show those little imperfections, too. The scratches, the dents, the patina.
Wait, really? Because I feel like, on some platforms, it's like, make it look perfect.
Yeah.
Like, airbrush it out.
It's different with antiques. Those imperfections tell a story. They add character.
So those little dings and scratches, that's like part of the charm.
Exactly. They're part of the history of the piece.
That's so interesting. Okay, so you got the photos. We're showing all the good angles. We're showing the imperfections. What about the description?
The description is just as important. You want to be meticulous. List the materials, the dimensions, any historical context you might have for that silver tea set. Mention the specific type of silver, the pattern name, maybe even the history of that pattern.
Oh, wow. So you really got to do your research.
You want to answer any questions a collector might have before they even ask them.
Yeah, because if you're a collector, you want to know this stuff. You're not just buying it for, to serve tea. Right. It's about the history. It's about the maker, the craftsmanship.
It's an investment.
Yeah.
Right.
It's an investment. It's not just a thing. So that's really cool. So it's like you said, painting a picture, but with words and with visuals.
Yeah, exactly.
You really got to go all in. So, okay, we've got the shop. It's set up. Listings are looking good. The About section, you've poured your heart into it. People are going to love it.
Hopefully.
But how do you actually make the sale, right? That's the whole point. And on Ruby Lane, it's a little different, right?
It is.
Because they use this purchase order system instead of just like, instant buy, add to cart like we see on other platforms. So explain that a little bit. How does that work?
Yeah, so it might feel a little bit different at first, but it actually offers a lot of advantages.
Okay.
Especially when you're dealing with, antiques and vintage items. It allows for more personalized touch, I think.
Yeah.
So a buyer expresses interest in an item, and then you can communicate directly with them. You can clarify any details. You can calculate shipping costs based on their location.
Right, yeah.
So it creates a much more transparent and flexible experience.
Because I'm imagining, like, if you're selling, an antique armoire,
right?
Like, shipping that is not going to be like, click, 2-day shipping.
Right.
You got to, like, figure that out.
Exactly.
So I guess that makes sense. It's almost like a more human interaction.
It is. It's like you're back in a brick and mortar antique shop.
Yeah.
You're talking to the person, you're figuring out the details.
And you're building that rapport, that trust.
Exactly.
Which I'm guessing is super important on a platform like Ruby Lane.
It's crucial.
So, okay, you've made the sale, purchase order. It's all gone through. Now you got to ship this thing. And I'm guessing, again, a little bit different than just slapping a label on a box.
Yeah, packing is super important on Ruby Lane. You're not just sending out some mass-produced item in a standard box.
Yeah.
Right. You're dealing with fragile, often irreplaceable pieces.
Yeah, you're dealing with history.
Exactly. So invest in good quality packing materials. Learn how to wrap and secure fragile items. And always ensure your shipments.
That's a good point. It's not worth, saving a couple bucks on bubble wrap if, grandma's, tea set gets shattered in the mail.
Exactly.
So, okay, so we've kind of walked through that whole process. Now, let's go back a step. Let's talk about sourcing. Like, where do you find these amazing things?
Right.
Because, not everyone has, like, an attic full of, priceless antiques just sitting around. So where do you even begin?
That's where developing a niche really comes in handy.
Okay.
Let's say you specialize in Art Deco furniture, for example.
Okay. Yeah.
You start to learn the key designers, the materials that were used, the hallmarks of authentic pieces. That expertise becomes your advantage.
So it's almost like you're training your eye, right?
You are. You're training your eye to spot those valuable pieces that other people might overlook.
So you walk into an estate sale and everyone else is like, oh, that's a dusty old lamp. And you're like, wait a minute, that's a Tiffany.
Exactly.
That's so cool. So where do you find these places? Like, what are the hunting grounds, so to speak?
Honestly, it can be a mix of everything. Estate sales are fantastic, like you said.
Okay, yeah.
Especially if you're knowledgeable about a certain period or style. Auctions can be thrilling, but they require a bit more strategy. You got to have a cool head under pressure.
Because you see those on TV and it's like bam, bam, bam.
It's intense.
And then I'm guessing, building relationships with other people in the industry.
Oh, absolutely. Networking is huge. Getting to know experienced pickers, antique dealers, they can be an invaluable source of information and leads.
So it's almost like you're joining this secret society of antique hunters.
There's definitely a community aspect to it.
That's really cool. Now, we talk a lot about, marketing and social media on this show.
Right.
But I'm getting the sense that Ruby Lane is a little bit different in that regard.
It is. It's not as social media driven as some other platforms.
Okay.
It's more about cultivating a strong reputation within the platform itself.
So it's less about going viral on TikTok with your vintage hat collection.
Right.
It's more about having those amazing listings, the great customer service, the trust that you build within the Ruby Lane community.
Exactly. But that doesn't mean you can't use your own website or social media to kind of drive traffic to your shop.
Right, yeah.
It's about finding a balance between showcasing your expertise within the platform and then expanding your reach beyond it.
So, okay, we've talked about what to do, right? All the good stuff. Let's flip it around for a second. What are the don'ts?
Oh, yeah.
What can you do on Ruby Lane that will totally tank your reputation?
The big one is honesty, integrity. Never misrepresent an item. If there's a chip in a teacup, a small tear in a vintage dress, disclose it. Be upfront about any repairs.
Because, it's antiques, right? It's not going to be perfect.
Exactly. And collectors appreciate transparency. They'd rather know about an imperfection up front than be disappointed later.
Because I'm imagining, if you're a collector and you're, really excited about this, this vase, and then it arrives and it's, chipped or something.
It's heartbreaking.
It ruins it, yeah. It's not what you thought you were getting.
And it damages your reputation as a seller.
So that's a good point. Be honest. Be upfront. And then I'm guessing, just like in any customer service situation.
Yes.
Don't ignore messages.
Respond promptly. Answer any questions thoroughly.
Okay.
Keep your buyers informed.
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes on those platforms you can get lost in the the back and forth.
It's easy to do.
But you got to treat it like, you would if someone walked into your actual shop.
Absolutely. You want to provide that same level of service and attention.
So it's really about approaching this as a long-term thing, not just I'm going to make a quick buck.
Right. It's about building relationships, fostering trust, sharing your passion for these unique pieces.
That's really well said. Now, I know Ruby Lane has a couple of kind of unique features
Yes.
that can help you, boost visibility, make those sales. I've heard about these red tag sales.
Yeah.
Those are pretty cool.
Those are great. So it's a platform-wide event where sellers offer discounts on select items.
Okay.
It's a great way to attract attention, especially if you're new to the platform where you're looking to move some inventory.
So it's kind of like a Ruby Lane sale day.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. And then is there I don't know, any other tips or tricks that you've learned along the way?
Always keep an eye on Ruby Lane's news section. They often share announcements, best practices, even tips from seasoned sellers. It's a valuable resource to kind of stay up to date on, all things Ruby Lane.
So it's like getting that inside scoop.
It is. You're getting advice from the pros.
That's great. And, we keep talking about photos, right?
Yeah.
Because that seems to be the key thing. How do you make your photos look magazine worthy?
Invest in a good camera. Invest in a good lighting setup. Learn how to style your pieces, how to capture those details, and don't be afraid to learn a little bit of photo editing too.
Okay. So it's worth, spending a little time, a little money to get that professional look.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, because you're competing with all these other shops.
You are. And you want to make your items stand out.
Because you're basically showcasing them like they're in a museum.
Exactly.
Now, what about, I'm curious, about the shop itself, right? Like, we talked about the about section, but is there, like, can you customize it, like, make it your own?
You can. Ruby Lane offers some limited customization options.
Okay.
You can definitely put your own personality into it. Choose a catchy shop name, create a nice banner image, and just pay attention to the overall aesthetic you're creating with your listings.
So even though you're kind of like playing within, the Ruby Lane world, you can still make it your own.
Absolutely. You want your shop to be a destination, a place where collectors feel like you're discovering something special.
That's a great point. It's really amazing. I never thought about it like that. Like, these objects, they have a whole life before they get to you.
They do. They have their own journeys.
Then you're kind of like giving them a new chapter.
You are. You're passing the torch.
Yeah. It's like, it's not just a thing. It's a piece of someone's story.
And you're giving it a chance to be part of someone else's story.
That's really cool. Listening to you talk about this, I'm looking around my house now. I'm like, what have I got? What's in those dusty boxes in the attic?
There you go. You never know what treasures you might find.
Maybe there's like a vintage record collection up there, or some old maps.
There could be.
I love old maps.
That's the magic of antiques and vintage collectibles. They hold memories. They hold stories. And by selling them on Ruby Lane, you're not just making a profit. You're giving those pieces a chance to be, cherished and loved by someone new.
It's a really cool way to think about it. And I think that's a great note to wrap up on. As we finish our deep dive here into the world of Ruby Lane, what would you say, like, to our listener, who's thinking about, maybe giving this a shot? What would be your final piece of advice?
I would say look around your house, look around your attic, your basement. What do you have that you might have overlooked? What could find a new home on Ruby Lane?
Maybe it's that old, piece of jewelry you never wear anymore. Or a first edition book that's just been sitting on a shelf. Or even a vintage camera,
You never know what might spark a collector's interest. So embrace your curiosity, refine your eye for those hidden gems, and see where this journey takes you.
Yeah. It's a journey of discovery, it sounds like. And who knows, you might find a whole new passion you never even knew you had.
Exactly.
Well, to our listener, happy hustling.
Happy collecting.
Go out there, explore the world of Ruby Lane, unearth those treasures and share those stories with a community that really appreciates the value of the past. And until next time, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you on the next one.